Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. You're listening and watching, of course, to the Rangers morning briefing on Friday, the 2nd of September. I'm Derek Clark, and I'm joined by Joshua Barrie back alongside me. How are we getting on, Joshua?
Yeah, good, Derek. Been, around behind the scenes, but Craig's obviously been, I think he was on 5 days in a row, so he's having a well-earned rest. But yeah, good. Obviously, yesterday wasn't kind of as busy as transfer deadline tends to be, very quiet, which we'll speak about. Speak about obviously a certain Old Firm game tomorrow that will hold quite a lot of weight. So lots to get through as ever.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we do that, folks, we've got a new offer on an Old Firm offer, no less. You can see the little ticker below where you now get 2 months worth of content to the Rangers review site for just £1 now. It was £2, still cheap as chips. So £1 gets you 2 months worth of content, just £2.99 per month thereafter. Head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe for all the details. And as ever, I'll stick in the link in the section, in the comments section as well. So if you head along to that, you can get yourself signed up. So yeah, an absolute giveaway, and it ends on the 5th of September, folks. So you've got 3 days tomorrow. Monday ends, so make sure you take advantage of it before it ends. Okay, folks, let's talk Rangers transfer deadline day yesterday, Joshua. It was it was a quiet day for Rangers. No incomings. The only outgoing was Stephen Kelly leaving. He's headed to Livingston. I wish him the best of luck. Hopefully, I'm sure he'll smash it down there. But a lot of supporters not happy that there wasn't any activity at Ibrox. I was made aware, I think, the day before that they weren't expecting a busy day, and that turned out to be the case. What's your review of the day, or the events or the non-events that took place yesterday?
Yeah, there's obviously so much to kind of try and recount, Derek, because there's lots of opinion tied into it. I guess you've got the topic of the finances and how much do Rangers actually get in from the Champions League now? Is the squad, does it have the necessary depth and strength to go and win the league title back? Has Van Bronckhorst been sufficiently backed? And then on the other side of that, some of the conversation last night on Twitter as well was how much is it obviously important to consider the financial stuff and everything that on the outside people don't have quite as good a grasp on as those obviously who actually see the numbers inside the club until the accounts come out. My instinct, just on the base layer of looking at the squad, and I've got it in front of me, I'm going to do a piece today, Derek, on the transfer window, but also where the squad's at, is that if everyone's fit, and that's the caveat, you've got good depth in there. But if you look at the likes of Ruth and Helander, even Davies at the moment, with injuries going into the game tomorrow, there's areas of the squad we still think perhaps Rangers needed to address that position on the right. Perhaps there's a need for a little bit depth behind the number 8s, Lawrence and Tillman. Then you've also got the caveat to that, well, when Hadji and Lowry come back, that's probably taken into consideration as well. But Rangers obviously need to win now. So many factors. And I guess it's one of these things where we won't know the success of it until the next summer, when it depends what Rangers have won this season. But I do think on the surface of it, I'd have liked to see another attacker come into the squad in some capacity.
Yeah. So many comments coming in, folks. I'll try and get to a few of your comments here. Duncan, I love this. I love this post. Morning, gents. Don't know what I'm more nervous about, the Old Firm or getting married at the same time. Well, we wish you all the best with your wedding, Duncan. But that's not good planning whatsoever. I don't know if it's if you need to take the blame or shoulder the blame for that one. But I can't think of anything worse, to be honest, getting married and having an Old Firm game on at the same time. But hopefully your team wins, and hopefully it's a good day also as well. Right, some of the comments coming in. Listen, a lot of displeasure, Joshua, with regards to the inactivity. Daniel Frew says, unfortunately, it's deja vu this season with the lack of strikers. Now, this is something that Giovanni Van Bronckhorst touched on in Portugal, where he said He doesn't want a repeat of last season when Rangers were playing midfielders, centre forwards. There was a raft of injuries, of course. Rangers currently have Antonio Cholak, and he'll lead the line, of course, at Parkhead on Saturday. Alfredo Morelos, we're told, has been training well and really has been heeding the advice given to him. I think it's the sooner he's back up and running and firing, the better. Kemar Roof, I know he's posted on his Instagram a little cryptic message, but we've yet to see him, Joshua. Logic tells you it's going to be a number of weeks before we actually see him playing at a top level, if at all. Are you slightly concerned with the fixtures coming up, the calibre of games, Celtic and then Ajax, and then it's games every few days in this period of time that Rangers have the firepower. It's a risky game, shall we say. If Cholak gets injured or what have you, then you really are in the sticky wicket, as you say.
Yeah, well, obviously you've got the Old Firm on Saturday, and then it's Ajax is Wednesday or Tuesday. I always forget the days. The Champions League is Wednesday, and then I think it's Aberdeen away the week after. So 3 huge games, and you could have Morelos comes back and scores, or someone signs a new contract, and there's good news on an injury, and then it's it's vindication, if you like. Or you could have Rangers don't have a successful next week. Maybe there's certain areas of the squad that people feel should have been addressed that are then highlighted in these games. So it's all, I think, so circumstantial. Also, you've got speaking wider about the transfer window, you've got some of the new signings who haven't quite hit the ground running yet. So Rabi Matondo, I think, still we're to see the best of him. Hasn't played loads of football, but has looked more comfortable off the left than the right to me. I think the plan in big games will be to have that kind of Lawrence coming inside and Tavernier going higher, but I still think the balance of a left-footed right-sided attacker, that's what I'm trying to say. I think that would have offered Rangers something they kind of don't have. Even when Hadji comes back, obviously he played there at points under Van Bronckhorst, but I don't think he's at his best when he's out wide on the right. In the middle of the park, I'm a little bit less concerned behind Tillman and Lawrence, because I think you see in Europe what Glenn Kamara can do. I think it depends on him. For me, I imagine he'll start next to John Lundstrom tomorrow, and I think it's on him to have a really good season and in these games be the big game player that he was for Rangers kind of a couple of seasons ago, when it would have been incomprehensible if Kamara hadn't started in Europe or whatnot. And against PSV, you've got to look at that starting 11 and say, well, there's a quality there to go and do something in Europe. But I guess it's looking at, do they have the necessary depth to then go and do game for game when there's injuries and when there's players that are injured in the squad quite regularly, such as Roof and Hillander, who's played, hardly played since he scored the winner against Celtic just over a year ago now. I think it was August 29th. So yes, it's all very circumstantial. And as I think transfer deadline day is such a ordeal now that everyone, wants, us working on it, people watching it, everyone wants something to happen. And because of Van Bronckhorst's comments, I'm writing a piece on this, as I said today, and there's some interesting kind of contradictions, because at points after Yilmaz had come in, he said he thought that would be the last signing coming in. And obviously on Tuesday night, the press conference, he said, this is the squad I think we will have. But then there was a couple of moments in that interview with Sky when he said, you never know what happens at the end of a transfer window. It can be crazy. Yeah. And obviously after they get through against PSV. So would he have liked more players? And maybe you'd imagine that a manager will always want to, have greater resources. But this is ultimately what Rangers have, the squad now. I think probably most people would agree there's some question marks, particularly on what happens on the right long term, if they've got the required depth at the top of the pitch. But we'll just have to wait and see, won't we? Ultimately, the proof's in the next week, the next month, up until the January window. Yeah,
it certainly is. This question came in about Kamara that you touched on, Joshua. Reports yesterday morning suggested Nice were preparing a bid. I was led to believe that there was nothing in that, and it turned out to be the case. And 12, Osco says, buzzing Kamara stayed. Would have been disgusted if we let him go. He's a big player for Rangers, Joshua. I know there was some consideration among supporters that he could be allowed to leave, and it doesn't necessarily weaken the squad, because Rangers are a bit top heavy, you could say, in that midfield department. But Rangers really need him firing in all cylinders tomorrow, don't they? They need one of those trademark European performances if Rangers are going to get a victory.
Yeah, and you see that with PSV away, and I guess this is sometimes the frustration with Kamara, that there's never a question about his technical quality or his ability to go and kind of impress in any game that I've seen him playing. I think it will be him next to Lundstrom. I can't remember if it was before a certain game, it might be in the PSV game. I think he's at his best, not when he's playing ahead of Lundstrom, because I don't think that's worked necessarily in domestic games. But he's at his best when he's next to a midfield partner that they can be the one that asserts and holds the game and kind of stamps the authority on it, all the cliches. But then Kamara can go and add things to that, take the ball out of tight areas. That touch he shows all the time is just so hard for opponents to combat. And if he's on his game, Rangers have a really good midfield pairing for those big European games. You've also got Stephen Davis as well. I don't think Ryan Jack's looked quite himself yet since the summer. I don't know if that's just, sometimes players are out of form. But even, you look when he lost that ball against Hibs, that his kind of pocket was picked. I don't think I've ever seen that happen to Ryan Jack in 4 or 5 years of him. Yeah. Previous 4 or 5 years or 6 years he's been at Rangers. Then you have to consider, I guess, the youth products. Players like Charlie McCann, Leon King. I know you were writing about this this week, Derek. Alex Lowry. Is there a pathway for them when they come back? But again, the top of all these discussions is it's a results business, and that's what people who put the money into the club and watch the club want to get out of it. They want positive results, and with the number of injuries at the moment, I guess that's a slight concern going into this week, where Rangers have that caveat with their squad of Roof and Hadji not being there, and Helander and Davies and Suter. If you have a full squad, I think it's probably a different tone of discussion. But Van Bronckhorst probably will have to you can't obviously call upon a number of those players that are mentioned. But to summarise on Kamara, I think he's at a stage of his career as well where he needs to go and have I think he's 26 now, 25. Yeah. I think these European games will suit him perfectly. The question is for me more when you have domestic games in the next kind of couple of months, maybe before Lowry's back fit or Hadji's back fit, because we don't have a realistic time frame on when they'll be back and match fit. Who do you play if one of Lawrence or Tillman is injured or needs a rest at that top of midfield? I think Rangers is still a little bit short there. Yeah,
well, let's touch on Tom Lawrence, because there are concerns that he's going to be out for at least tomorrow, the Old Firm game, but also for some considerable time. Now, we're speaking to the manager this afternoon, folks, so we'll get an update from him on the timescale with regards to that, but it certainly looks like he's out of the game tomorrow. I think it's ready-made for him as well. It's a huge blow, Joshua. I'm sure he'd have been itching to play in it. And likewise, Ajax in midweek as well. He started his Rangers career ever so well. Who replaces him if he's out? If just playing devil's advocate here, who comes in and replaces Tom Lawrence?
Yeah, well, as you say, obviously we don't know that for sure, but speaking to the manager this afternoon, so we'll be able to get the team news ahead of tomorrow. I don't know really who plays, because I don't think you probably put Rabbi Matondo in there. I imagine it's maybe
not.
Nah, I think it's maybe a Scott Wright or Scott Arfield situation.
Yeah,
I think Scott Arfield coming off the bench, you've seen what he's still got to offer to this Rangers squad. I'm not sure from the start, especially given he played in midweek, if he'll start tomorrow in the Old Firm. Scott Wright, what he might give you, I think, is a defensive performance on that right side. Celtic have channeled a lot of their attacks down the left side this season. Greg Taylor's comes inside a lot. I think he's a really important player for them at the back in terms of getting the ball forward and their rotations in the middle of the pitch. So they obviously really hurt Rangers in that 3-0 game, but Van Bronckhorst is adapted well since that game, and we've got a great piece on the website from Craig this morning looking at how Rangers might use that approach they did away in PSV, where they man marking points, they're aggressive, and obviously they press to win the game, win the tie with Tillman and Cholak. But I don't see many options apart from those two. unless Rangers were to go for a more conservative midfield and maybe play Kamara higher and tuck Tillman off the right. But I think you've got to play Tillman in his best position tomorrow. For me, he's been Rangers. I think he's probably been Rangers standout, apart from Cholak, in terms of overall performance so far. You see his intelligence, the way he can impact games. Something that stood out to me so far, Derek, is the way, his little dummy runs or the way he leaves the ball. So many times in PSV, he was getting the ball in so quickly to his feet, and he doesn't even, his first touch isn't to control the ball, but his first touch is to move play on or start the next move. I think you've got to probably play him in his best position. You need a big performance from Ryan Kent. Absolutely. On the left-hand side. So, yeah, lots of questions to answer for tomorrow. But if Lawrence is out, that'll be a huge blow, because I think as well he's been arguably as impressive in points as Tillman. I don't think he's older and at a different stage of his career. But if you look at how he's come in and adapted really quickly to life at Rangers, made quite a big impact, scored a few goals, you definitely want him in your starting 11 if you could tomorrow. And the team that played against PSV, I thought that gave Rangers a really nice balance as well. So it'll definitely be a blow if he's not available. But as you say, we'll find that out this afternoon.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to have Dave join us as well. A bit late, but we'll let you off, Dave. Lots of questions come in with regards to those injuries, Joshua. A lot of supporters frustrated. Katic Loyal says we have more injuries than A&E. I fear we are spread too thin. I think he's got a point. There's a number of players on the treatment table. The long-term ones, of course, Hadji, Helander and Roof. Hopefully Roof, as I mentioned, is closer to a return to action. But then you're thinking, based on his injury record, for how long can he be relied upon? Helander, I've just sort of given up on when we can expect to see him back. I think Rangers defensively have got James Sands, Connor Goldson, James Tavernier and Borna Barisic. I'd imagine will start at Parkhead. Maybe a shout for Ridvan Yilmaz to slot in there at left back. But I think Barisic has done okay relatively this season. But that aside, then you're looking at who could possibly come in. Leon King, of course, was seen in midweek in the game last weekend. John Suter, we're still waiting for. Joshua Ben Davis, we don't yet know. So Rangers a wee bit thin on the ground, you could say, defensively.
Yeah, and obviously Barisic, the last two times he's went to Celtic Park, I think the second game, the goal at the back post wasn't quite as much his fault, but that's a factor going into tomorrow. Do you throw Yilmaz in there? Probably not, but I guess there's two sides to the argument. When you spent a lot of money on a player and he's played in big games, I remember Celtic threw, I think it was Juranovic they threw in it, the first Old Firm game of last season.
You're right, yeah.
So I don't think it's incomprehensible that happens. Barisic could, of course, go and have a really good game, but based on the last couple, I think it's definitely something to consider before it. James Sands and Connor Goldson, that's pretty set in stone for me at the moment. Even when other players are back, I think he's done really well in there. Sands and was in a couple of games, I think he's been Rangers' best defender recently, particularly in PSV. So I think the back four pretty set apart from, as you say, or as I say rather, what happens at left back. Will the manager throw Yilmaz in, who I thought looked sharp on, I know it's Queen of the South, etc. But I thought he looked sharp, and there was quite a few aerial balls kind of aimed in his direction. He actually did pretty well in there. I think he won kind of 3 or 4 headers up against a player that was a bit taller than him. Obviously, he's seen his quality for that goal, the run inside the pitch, the underlap, and the kind of touch to take it beyond the defender and cut back. So he's got speed, and he'd be up against a winger maybe in a similar size to him. So perhaps the aerial duel wouldn't be as much of a concern. But yeah, I think aside from that, the other 3 positions definitely pick themselves.
Yeah. Okay. But touched on the midfield. We expect Kamara and Lundstrom to be that holding midfield pair. I just want to touch on this comment from the greatest username ever, Joshua, the man who ate the boiled ham Roy, says, Derek and Joshua, can you sign off by doing the bouncy from now on? Not quite sure my floor will take the old bouncy, but a good point that you raised there. But we'll pass it on to the powers that be and see if that's something we can integrate into the show. Question come in here from Sean Maxwell. I don't think you can. I think that's unfair to say at this stage, Joshua. Very poor transfer window at the moment. This is a side that have just beaten PSV in their own backyard and qualified for the Champions League. I get supporters are I feel that I think everyone feels that Rangers need to strengthen in the right wing and centre forward areas in particular. But you've got to trust that the players that are there, the players that have been brought in, a lot of them have started really well. Cholak, Tillman, Lawrence. So I think at the moment it's too early to say that. But like you say, the proof will be in the pudding. It's an intense fixture list up until the international break on the horizon, and that will give us an idea if the transfer business is successful or not. Let's take Magic Mass. At this rate, I would have taken a Mad back on loan. I wanted to touch on this, Joshua. He's joined Sunderland on a season-long loan. Are you gutted at that news?
I mean, if you'd taken your options, I think you'd have taken him back and to provide a little bit of balance, because people forget by the end he actually looked like he'd kind of adjusted it.
Yeah.
I also think you've got to be kind of smart about the reaction to signings. And if Rangers, after the whole summer window, went back and got a player on loan who didn't really, make an impact for them last season, I don't think that would be a great look. Particularly when they brought in Rabi Matondo, who, as we say, we don't know if he's going to be the answer on the right wing, but Rangers have spent money to bring him in. And you imagine he's not going to usurp Kent on the left. So I don't think that would have been I think it would have been maybe a bit too reactionary. I think the other side of this topic is important to talk about, Derek, is that Van Bronckhorst in the last two Old Firms before the end of last season, I thought he set his team up really well, and that was before he'd brought in any of these players, really had any say in the transfer market. Obviously, Sands was in, but he wasn't playing. Ramsey and Diallo both didn't make the impact that was expected of them. When Rangers went and got that draw at Parkhead away last year, it was Sakalo that scored the goal. I think Arfield and Wright that helped set him up. So I don't think it's a case of that Rangers are massively understaffed or can't go and win this game tomorrow. I understand the narrative that Van Bronckhorst is slightly limited in the players he can select. But I think Rangers need to be brave. They need to go and attack. They can't set off too much. Obviously, we'll speak more about this tomorrow when we do I think we're going to do a morning briefing before the game tomorrow, because it's a half 12 kickoff. But yeah, if you look at the last two times he's went up against them, I think there's probably a lot to be confident about as well. And players like Tillman, intrigued to see how they do in a game of this magnitude and standing, because so far whatever he's been thrown into, he's adjusted to really impressively. So of course you'd rather have everyone fit and available, but as I say, I think you've got to also give the manager some a bit of trust, given what he's done in games like this so far.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Craig gets in touch, just touching on Duncan, who's getting married tomorrow. He says he's going to the wedding as well. Not his, but he's got another one, not Duncan's either. I think it's wedding season tomorrow, probably for the best for my blood pressure. If any of you are at weddings tomorrow, then make sure you've got one eye on the game. I'm sure the bride and groom will understand totally. Right, this question, the same person poses this question, Joshua. He says, do you think with Lundstrom we could see three at the back tomorrow? I think he's better placed in midfield. I can't see Gio going three at the back tomorrow. Can you?
No, I don't think so. Obviously, I can understand Craig's kind of comment, because that's happened a lot in different games, but he's always tended to go for a back four, Gio, in Old Firm games. And he's also, I can't remember where this comment was, but I think it might have been after the Dortmund game. He made a comment about why he started with a back four, even though Rangers were 4-2 up. And I think normally a back three he'd probably categorise that as not being as aggressive when he plays that formation, and I don't think that's what he wants to do tomorrow. And you need John Lundstrom in the middle of the pitch in a game like this, absolutely. I think he's, and I don't know if he plays next to Kamara, as I say, hopefully that brings out the best in Kamara and allows him to add on to what Lundstrom does in the middle, trying to dominate the game. Because if you've got a midfield three of Kamara, Lundstrom and Tillman, if they perform well, there's a lot of quality in that middle, in the middle of that pitch. As I think some of the comments have said, Kamara needs to probably show that a little bit more consistently. But yeah, you want John Lundstrom in the middle of the pitch, absolutely. And I think going travelling there with John McLaughlin. Last time Rangers played against Celtic at Parkhead, it was McGregor and goals, and they kind of adjusted the plan quite well to just go over the press a lot. Didn't really allow Celtic to press, and it worked well. So will they try and bait the press in and play through it? That's a bit of a risk. Will they just try and go over the top Be a lot of kind of questions that we don't really know the answer to heading into tomorrow.
Yeah, but it's the battlefield is very much building, and I love that comment from Aldo. That is dedication to the cause there, Aldo. Wouldn't even wouldn't go to the birth of his child to watch the third game. Absolutely sensational stuff. JT with an interesting point here, Joshua. He says, morning chaps, do you see any of the young boys on the bench tomorrow? Lovelace, McCann, any word on Lowry? Lowry's going to be some weeks, JT. We shouldn't expect him back for some time, unfortunately, due to that horrific challenge at Dumbarton. Lovelace, we've seen a little cameo on Tuesday. Was it Tuesday night? Tuesday night, wasn't it?
Yes, Tuesday night, yeah.
Charlie McCann, loved the little back heel for Arfield's goal. Listen, if Charlie McCann was in that starting lineup on Saturday, I would have no concerns whatsoever. I think this boy is a real special talent, Joshua. I certainly can see McCann on the bench tomorrow. Can you?
Yeah, I think he will. I also think it's a good comment by Jim. Why not play Kent on the right, Matondo on the left? We scored on Saturday with Kent coming in from the right. Sorry, it's just because I have this in my head, Derek. I think McCann will be on the bench, and I agree that I'd like to see him get more minutes this season. And obviously, that's kind of, you can't bring lots of players in, and then minutes have to come from somewhere. So maybe that's part of the thinking in the midfield area. I think Matondo's looked more comfortable off the left-hand side so far. And at points, Kent, domestically, when he can find space in the middle of the pitch, he's going to be more of a goal threat from there. He's going to provide from out left, Kent, absolutely. And his assist numbers are pretty good after Van Bronckhorst came in last season, getting to the byline, isolating his marker. But he's not going to really score from there at all. I think we can say that quite confidently. That's not his strength, probably cutting in from that side. So do you then maybe play tomorrow Kent maybe not on the left, you stick Matondo to the left-hand side, because I think Matondo can also create from the left. You've seen him get a couple of assists. I know one was from a tackle, but they all count. When he started off the left against St Johnstone, he obviously hit the bar when he cuts inside. Do you maybe start Matondo out there? I don't think they will tomorrow, because I don't think they'll throw him in. But going forward, do you maybe have Kent, because he can play with both his feet, at times playing a more central role or cutting in off the right? I don't think that's the worst shout in the world, and I don't know if going forward, if Rangers don't have, if Matondo doesn't really work off the right, maybe Lawrence plays that kind of inverted role at points. But I don't think that's a bad shout by Jim, and because Kent can go in on both sides, and as he mentions that second assist, maybe domestically that'll be something that we see a bit more going forward.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see the lineup that Giovanni Van Bronckhorst selects tomorrow. Alexander Cameron is going to miss it, though. He says he's in Aviemore this weekend, so won't be able to see the game. It is a nice place, but missing the Old Firm game. Come on, Alexander, you need to get your priorities right there.
I'm sure somewhere there'll be some.
Surely, there's pubs there in Aviemore, is there not?
There is, yeah. It's just north of where I'm from, Derek, so I know it relatively well. Nice place, but I'm sure there'll be a little. What word am I looking for? Woodland pub somewhere showing it. That's what I'm trying to say.
Anyone in the comments, if you know where somewhere where Alexander can watch the game, then help a bear out, as they say. Okay, just wanted to touch on this just before we go, Joshua. Just going back to the transfer window again, Alan McInnes says, on a positive note, we have managed to clear a group of players who have no future at Rangers. Of course, Nikola Katic has departed for FC Zurich, and I've got to say his emotional message was. It would bring a tear to a glass eye. He loved the club. He got it from day dot. And we wish him all the best. I think that's a very good move for player and club. Just didn't happen after that injury, unfortunately. Rangers moved on to another level. Although they'd have taken him at Parkhead tomorrow. He's a top quality siege defender, and he would have loved that. Of course, no one can forget his header at Parkhead. Stephen Kelly, as I mentioned, heading out to Livingston as well. So Rangers have moved on. Some players that aren't part of the first team squad. Joshua, of course, Maciej Zukowski as well as went back to Poland on a loan deal to Lech Poznan. So there has been some work done. I think it's important that for these players' careers that they're shifted on to further their careers somewhere else.
Yeah, and I think I've got it in front of me, all the outs. Let me see. Yeah, I do. Andy Firth, Balogun, Katic, Simpson, Zukowski, obviously Bassett and Aribo, Hasty, Middleton, Itten and Kelly. So there is obviously, a fair amount of players who weren't going impact the first team squad and where cost and wages moved out, which I guess has to be considered. Katic, yeah, he did get it, and he was so. You remember those early qualifiers under Gerrard? I have the memory of the press conference where Gerrard was speaking about how much he loves Katic, and there was interest in him at one point, and he really, that was when he was a young defender, and I think there was, everyone was really impressed at how he came in and performed. Always had limitations on the ball, which I think were going to stop him from maybe progressing with Rangers and coming back after what was a really serious knee injury. It's always going to be difficult to come back from that, isn't it? But played a big part in getting Rangers into Europe in the first instance alongside Goldson. In that centre back partnership, and as you say, it was a really nice message. I think very sincere, and a player that I think will be very fondly remembered. I hope Stephen Kelly goes and does well at Livingston, because I think you remember last season there was a lot of talk of him, would he get in under Gerrard, and he was talked up a lot in pre-season. So he needs to go and play football somewhere, I think, quite consistently. Obviously, I think a pretty promising loan spell at Ross County a couple of seasons ago. So all the best to him as well.
Yeah, but the real loss, as CGM55 says, Joshua, is Andy Firth. That is a big one, of course. He's went to, I think, Connah's Quay Nomads, which is not too far away from where I'm living down here. But yeah, he's a big loss, of course, to the Rangers squad this summer. But no, we wish Andy all the best in his career going forward. And good to have William Matheson who gets in touch. Hi guys, listening from Fuerteventura. Enjoy listening to your daily chats. Great to have you on, William. Lovely part of the world down that neck of the woods. Have you been down there before, Joshua?
I've not. I was in Gran Canaria this summer though. So is Fuerteventura Canary Islands?
Yes, near to Lanzarote.
Yeah. Okay. So not to the actual island, but close. This has been a travel show today, Derek.
Well, Billy McCulloch says that this is turned into a wedding and travel guide. I do apologise, Billy. We'll make sure tomorrow when we do our Old Firm build-up video, I'm not too sure if we'll do it prior to the teams being announced, perhaps, or when the teams are announced. But we'll talk all things Rangers then, I do promise you. But yeah, I think that will do. So yeah, thanks to everyone for interacting with the show this morning. It's very much appreciated as ever. And if you're not aware of the offer we've got on now, it's been updated. It's just £1 for 2 months worth of content. It's our Old Firm Derby Day special. Ends on Monday, so you've got today and all weekend to take advantage of it. Head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe for all the details. And I'll unlock a whole load of content on the website for you. So much stuff on there just now. So do go check it out. Okay, we'll be back again tomorrow, as I mentioned. But until then, enjoy the rest of your Friday.